Well, good evening, and welcome again to Ideas at Work and Beyond. It's our pleasure to be invited in, or allowed in, I should say, to the beautiful office of Reverend Dr. Clive Calver, the senior pastor at Walnut Hill Community Church, and Lisa Sidlecki will be joining us as well. She's the communication director here at Walnut Hill Community Church. Some of you may know Lisa from her 20-year career with the Danbury News-Times.
Blast from the past.
Yes, where you had such important columns as Approaching Sanity, Nothing But Good News, and In Your Shoes.
That's right.
Okay, so people probably have read that over the years. We're just delighted to be here. It's kind of I love the title of this TV show, Ideas at Work and Beyond. And really that can cover everything from the arts to medicine to public policy to a lot of politics. And today we're going to be looking at Walnut Hill Community Church. Dr. Calver, on a Sunday morning in this area, it's as if they need extra police just to handle the traffic. I've been caught in this traffic. It streamed around from miles around, pouring into this church. If I lived in Bethel or Danbury, I would want to know what is going on at Walnut Hill Community Church, and what is it that's bringing so many people here?
Well, basically, it's a Christian church, Marty, but I hope it's an exciting church. It's a church where the music is contemporary, where the approach to the Bible is that it can be trusted, but it's got something to say for today, and that Christianity is not a belief in a sort of grey-bearded granddad in the sky is looking down on us, but it's a living relationship with a God who cares for us and sent his son to die for us. So there's something to live for and someone to meet in Jesus and something to find in a way of life. And that's something that interests people. And then that church wants to be contemporary. So we've tried to do everything from helping within the community, operating a share fest, days of action within the community, and even buying a brothel in Bangladesh.
Yeah, I want to get to that. Luckily, we have some time because I want to get to this brothel in Bangladesh. But before we do, for our viewing audience at home, they may have detected an ever so slight accent on your part.
This isn't true, Marty. I don't have an accent. Ask anyone at the BBC in London. Clive does not have an accent. Now look, let's be real about this.
Okay.
I don't have an accent, but you do.
We have the accent.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, it's your country.
It is, yeah.
But it's my language.
I think I heard, I forget who said it, but something like the Americans and the British are two peoples separated by a common language. I think that would apply. Who said that?
That was Churchill.
Oh, that was Churchill.
And it's true because as two nations we've stood together, we're still standing together. There's an incredible love and commitment between the British and the Americans. And I never dreamed I'd find the latter part of my life being lived out in the States, but it's a privilege to be here and to try to teach English as a second language to my congregation.
Okay, well that's very good. Yeah, I want to know a little bit more about you. I actually have been looking forward to this interview just to, be able to grill you on camera. But you were born and raised in Britain. You had a period during the 60s. If you had to paint a picture, would we be seeing this fine gentleman in the plaid shirt with the khaki pants, or what would the picture have been in the 60s? And then bring us up to how you ended up here.
Well, I was a 60s radical, and I realize this may be offensive to some of the people watching, sir, so I apologize. At the end of the 60s, with the Vietnam War going on, I was 5 rows from the front when we stormed the American embassy in Grosvenor Square in London to try to get peace in Vietnam, and the police charged on horseback and charged us back.
Lisa, I have to go to your committee. Is there a statute of limitation on the storming of the embassy? Has that all passed? Or?
No, he's storming it every day.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Figuratively.
Okay.
And a month after that, before you think I'm just a communist, we were storming the Russian embassy over peace in Czechoslovakia. You see, in those days, if it moved or breathed, we stormed it because we wanted to change the world. And it was then, in those days, at the very end of the 60s, that I started to work out that I really wanted to change the world, but my problem was I couldn't change me. And at that point, I actually heard a Christian preacher who bored me to tears. I'd heard the message so often, and I nearly escaped. I nearly got out of that church. But he stopped me at the door, and I found out that he and his wife and their 2 little children they had then lived down by the River Thames, and they shared their home with anyone who was unemployed, anyone who was an alcoholic, anyone who needed a bed for the night and some food. And they'd stack them in army beds, sort of 3 high, on the guest room walls.
Now, this would have been in the 60s.
This is right at the end,
Right at the
68,
end.
69.
Okay.
And so I said to this guy, Roger, what have you got? Because I was a kid from the East End of London, which is like saying Harlem. What have you got? And he looked at me and said, Jesus. And that one word changed my life, because 2 weeks later, walking up a side street in Hackney in the East End of London, I gave my life to Jesus Christ. 6 months later, I was in seminary, to the shock of the seminary, and the shock of me as well. And the rest is really history.
Did you turn up at the seminary and long hair?
That's
and,
right. Down here.
Okay.
And it was right near the end of my time at seminary that I was editing the student magazine. And a guy from America arrived in the seminary. And he started talking about Jesus. And I wanted an interview. So by this time I was going out with the daughter of the president of the seminary. I was the worst student. So
Okay.
this was not going down well.
Okay.
But it did get me an interview with the visiting American. And he explained that unfortunately he had to get to Heathrow Airport in London because Lady Bird Johnson, the wife of the former president,
Okay.
Lyndon B. Johnson,
Right.
was arriving at Heathrow and he'd got to greet her. And then I got my interview done.
Right.
And right at the end he said, well, of course, God's working around the world. And I looked at him like he was an idiot. 1.8% of the population in the United Kingdom then were what we would call evangelical Christians. They'd committed their lives to Jesus Christ in a personal relationship with him. They'd been declined for 70 years. The idea that God was doing anything anywhere was a ridiculous idea to me. And I said, well, where? And he said, well, in Brazil, in Korea, in Africa. God's on the march and people are meeting Jesus and so much is happening. And I couldn't believe my ears. And then the aides were banging on the door saying, "You got to go and greet Lady Bird Johnson." And this guy shouts back, "I'm busy. I'm doing something important." I said, meeting Lady Bird Johnson would not have been important.
Right.
And he went on talking to me because he realized he got me on the hook. And he talked about what it's like to dedicate your life to God, to offer him every part of yourself so that God could use you and lead you in ways that you would never take your own life.
Huh.
And the aides are banging on the door, "You've got to come." And he's saying, "Look, I'm busy." And he ended up just getting down on his knees and praying with me. And this has gone on for half an hour, and my world has been torn apart. I mean, as a result of that meeting, everything changed. I walked out of that room, having given God my life to do with whatever he wanted and wherever he wanted, believing that he could do something, having a dream. And finally this guy walks out to his aides who are furious. They get in the car and they drive off to greet Lady Bird Johnson very late.
Huh.
And I've always been grateful to Billy Graham
Oh, that's who that was.
for those minutes that changed my life. I later worked for it.
Oh,
But
my.
Bill is an amazing guy, because who would give up the wife of a president for some ridiculous 21-year-old student?
Huh.
But Billy Graham did.
Is that right? Now, did Lady Bird Johnson get the ride from the airport that she needed, or was he just part of a? I'm envisioning her, waiting with her bags.
Yeah, I
and,
never caught up with that side of the story. I was safer off not knowing.
Wow, that is very interesting story. So you stayed in touch with Billy Graham through the years and his involvement. I know he did a number of crusades in London and the air.
Yes, I was his program director for Mission England in the 80s, bringing the churches together for that.
Wow, very interesting. Okay, now let's bring it up there. So you're in seminary. You've had this encounter with the Lord, which, if you could just break that down a little bit. When you say, give my life to Jesus, what does that practically mean? What does it mean for someone who's who's involved in the 60s radical, wanting to change the world. Seems like your heart's in the right place. And what is this transformation? What does that mean? Because I think a lot of people in our audience, have heard this from religious types, and it's kind of a, yeah, okay, here we go again. What does that mean? What does that mean for someone who hasn't grown up in the church?
I think the difference is that you can believe in Jesus. And the Bible says even the devil does that. You can even come to a point of accepting Jesus and wanting everything Jesus has got for you. But the real question is, if Jesus Christ is the King of Kings, if he really did come to earth as a baby and yet as Son of God die on a cross for us, if he did teach us how to live, but want more than that, to give us the power to live life that way, then how do you and he get connected? And it's not just by an academic belief, nor is it by an acceptance of all the good things he wants to give you. It's by a surrender. It's when you surrender to him and say, Lord, I want to be what you want me to be and do what you want me to do and go where you want me to go. I want to belong to you. Now that surrender is a Christian commitment. And I'm certainly not suggesting God will make everybody a pastor who does that. Hopefully not, because most people will do something more useful, which is be in the real world and be engaged. It just means that he has control of your life. And the wonderful thing is, when he has control of your life, he comes to live inside you and be real to you. And by his Spirit, he gives you a relationship with him that in prayer and scripture and coming together with other Christians just comes alive, blows your mind and changes your world.
So when I asked the question to start out, that what is it? What is going on here? It's not just the contemporary music. It isn't just the great programs for the kids, but is it essentially this encounter with Christ that's being talked about here at Walnut Hill, and that's the dynamo and the attraction that's bringing so many people here?
Yeah, I don't know what else I could do, Marty. I mean, I could come on the box as I used to in Britain all the time and use moral slogans if I wanted to teach someone a new way of life. Mm-hmm. But to introduce someone to a person who brings that way of life, that's a much more intimate encounter. Mm-hmm. And to actually see people coming into the church. It was a lady who sat down and talked to me just a few weeks ago, and she said, I've always gone to church, but I really knew that there was something I was missing on, and I was looking for something. So I came here just before Christmas, and you were standing up there speaking, and for the first time I got it. I wasn't looking for something. I was looking for someone. And I made my commitment and gave my life to Jesus. And I found that he came and gave his life to me. And that really is what we're made for. And that's the joy of what Christianity is about, and that's what my job is about. It's bringing people to discover Jesus for themselves.
Lisa, yeah, you guys want to
I was going to say, the cool thing about this church, though, and why there's cars running in outside, is that the church is full of people just like that, who share an authentic faith. Who, for faith of them is not, a part of their life. It is their life.
Huh.
And it's authentic, it's real, it colors who we are as people, not just who we are, sometimes.
Right. Well, what's your story? Were you?
My story's not as good as your story.
Were you cloistered in a dorm room at a seminary talking with Billy Graham
Gosh,
while Lady Bird Johnson waited at the
No,
airport?
I was toiling at the News Times, hanging with my friends, going out after work at midnight and coming home at 4 in the morning. I mean, I wasn't bad, but I wasn't storming the gates. Let's put it that way. And I grew up. I had a happy family. I had kids. I had a good life, and there was really nothing that I can say was a radical change in my life, except for I felt like there was something missing. My kids were the ones who got me to come here. They were like, "Mom, my friends are having communion and doing this stuff," and I'm like, "Yeah, sorry, we don't do that." And then the guilt started to happen. I should have I believe in God. Always believe in God. My kids should come to church. We came here, and the very first day I came here, someone greeted me in such a way that I felt like I was loved. And it sounds so weird that someone can make you feel that way in one visit, in one, hi, how are you? And happened to get sick after that, wasn't here for 3 weeks, came back the third week. She greeted me again with we're glad you're back.
Huh?
And
you were missed.
We were missed. My kids were asking for those weeks, why can't we go back to that church, Mommy? You know, this was 8, 9 years ago, so they were 11 and 10, and for them, it just really, it answered their questions. And I found something here that was missing. I sat in the second row the first week I was here during the worship set, and I just wept. There was really something real that I felt that I couldn't deny, and it literally changed my life.
Now, as a communications director here, you're familiar with the program. Let's focus on the kids
Sure.
a little bit here, because, I mean, when you come in, you see it's wall-to-wall kids. They all seem to be having fun.
They're having fun.
I know when I was
Jumping around.
raised, I went to church, and you were kind of dragged off to church, and it wasn't a real
Yeah, no,
happy
you see
time.
the kids dragging the parents.
It's almost like that,
Them
if
all.
you've seen that Norman Rockwell painting of, dad at home reading the paper, smoking a cigarette, and the kids dutifully marching off to church with a rather dour, church mom.
With their Sunday best on and.
Yeah, their Sunday best on, would really rather be out playing baseball or something. But what are the kids' programs here at the church? What is it that
What
gets
is it
them
that?
so
Well,
jazzed
if you
about
go in
going to
there on
church?
Sunday mornings, they're jumping around, listening to music, and either on a track or they have a live musician in there. They break into small groups where they have their curriculum, but to call it Sunday school, it is, but it's so much more fun to them. The kids upstairs, I'm more familiar with that because my kids are a little older.
So the programs are what? Nursery to?
Nursery through high school, but it's broken down K through 5, grade 5.
All right.
For the Promised Land program. And then from 5th grade up, it's the youth program.
So if I'm at home, I've got a couple kids, similar situation to you,
Yep.
you're saying, come on down on a
You know, my
Sunday.
kids
When are
literally-
the services? When are the
Well,
times?
we go Saturday night at 5 p.m.
Saturday, okay.
Yeah, it's called our Areopagus service. A little
Okay.
different. It's an opportunity for, Clive, why don't you, that's your baby.
Yeah,
Give us a rundown.
Areopagus is a TV studio, really, with 100, 150 people sitting in the round, and the worship is unplugged. We'll pray, and then I'll preach, and at the end of it, there's question and answer. You can ask anything that you want, just straight out. It's just like working in a TV studio.
But is
at
this
the end
sort
of that, coffee and hors d'oeuvre.
Is that, when you say you have questions, what if you do have questions? What if, this all sounds very good, and these people seem very happy, and everyone's going to this thing, and it's a wonderful thing. But what if you have some serious questions? What if there's been some tragedy in their life? What if there's some, anger towards God? What if there's some doubt that this God even really exists, and people are sort of off on this, religious thing, and it's okay for them, but I'm a more logical person? Can you come with those questions?
Well, absolutely. One of the questions I got asked last week was basically, why didn't Jesus like gay people? And to which the answer is, Jesus was absolutely happy with anybody in any situation. Didn't always agree with what they did, but he certainly loved who they were. And it's time we stopped denying the love that we should have for people, just because we don't always agree with them. I used to find I did so much on the media in the UK with those who were from gay and lesbian groups, simply because as evangelical Christians we ran more AIDS beds than anyone else did. And so we were allowed to tell people that we didn't always agree with them as they lived, because we loved them as they died. And I think it is absolutely critical that people open up the real questions they've got. I don't want a church full of people who agree with me. The great joy is when you get folks who disagree, and we'll articulate it and be able to help each other. We're all on a journey, and it's a journey that's exciting.
So they can come. They don't have to be
No.
cleaned up and
No, no.
carrying a Bible
No.
and walk in here and agree with everything. They can come and have these serious questions and seek answers, and
Yeah.
it's okay if they don't agree right down the line.
The whole Christian faith is a journey, right?
Sure.
We don't end at a certain point. It doesn't end until Jesus comes back.
I keep my clerical collar off all weekend,
Okay.
and I don't wear my robes normally at all. And on Saturday night, it's open neck shirt and very casual. Sunday, I'll put a tie on just to accommodate the older members of the congregation. But Sunday morning is 8:10, which is a bit more conservative for those who feel happier with something more traditional. 9:30 and 11:10 are more contemporary. And then if you're Gen X and wild, 6 o'clock Sunday night. And if you prefer to work in Portuguese, 7 o'clock Sunday night.
Okay, so let's go back. Billy Graham leaves the room, Lady Bird Johnson gets
Gets a ride.
muted at Heathrow. That all works out. You have this newfound vision, passion. You're not sure how to do it. Walk us through. You got married. I've had the pleasure of meeting your lovely wife, Ruth. How did that happen? How did you get started? And tell us a little bit about World Belief. I know, it's only an hour show. This could go on for a while, but walk us through that.
Well, I married the president of the seminary's daughter.
Okay, just so I'm clear, you had a somewhat reformed hippie, if I can say it,
Yep.
at the lower end of the ranking of this seminary, who bags the president's daughter. That must have been a bit of a coup.
Let's say the lowest ranking when it came to the things that would have counted.
You made the upper 50% possible, is the way you could look at it.
And her mother on the wedding day was downstairs crying her eyes out at the disaster, the terrible tragedy that was befalling the family. Her father had a neat view on it, because as a preacher, he knew he was going to lose either way. He was either going to antagonize his daughter by writing in the wedding card that you have to do in the UK.
Right.
He was either going to antagonize his daughter by writing, "How could you do this to us?"
Uh-huh.
Or he was going to deny his wife's agony by wishing us a happy marriage together. So he hid behind a verse of scripture. And he wrote Luke 24 verse 15, which is when two people are on a road to Emmaus after Jesus has risen. And he wrote the words, Jesus himself drew near and walked with them. Because he had it figured out that if Jesus actually walked with us, then he could make our lives different. If Jesus walked with us in that marriage, things could be a real surprise to everyone. And although I think most people in seminary gave us 1 to 2 years, we've been married for 35 years this year. Those are the days when they were taking some of the new clergy and putting us into situations in society where we would meet real people. And I was twinned up with a musician named Graham Kendrick, who is a legend on the other side of the water when it comes to being a worship leader. But Gray and I worked through the years trying to build bridges in prisons, in special schools, just in ordinary schools, because you were allowed to go in and do that in the UK. We went everywhere that you could go with the good news of Jesus. And then as the years went on, I ended up working for Billy, getting the churches ready for Mission England. And after that, for some reason, they made me head of the evangelical churches in the UK. And I did that for 14 years. At the end of that...
Now, just to go back to a statistic, you said in the 60s,
Yeah.
it was about a 1.8% were
Yeah.
evangelical Christians in Britain, and then what happened? What happened to that number? What was there?
Well, by God's goodness, it went up to 7%. We had no church of 1,000 people. Now there are over 40. A couple of churches of 10,000. It doesn't sound many, but in a small island, something changed. And people started to find a relevance in the Christian faith. And it was very different to life in the US, because we weren't identified with any particular political position. And we weren't identified with being black or white in color. We tended to mix very freely and easily. And it was all this discovery of Jesus and what he could do in our lives. I remember going in to see one of the government ministers, Kenneth Clark, and he said to me one day, "Clive, you're always in here representing the evangelical churches, but I don't understand. I don't get it. 1 minute you're in here talking to me about abortion, family life, and moral issues. Next minute, you're in here talking about unemployment, homelessness, and world poverty. What are you evangelicals? Are you left wing or right wing?" To which I said, both. Depends on the issue, because we're following another king. And frankly, I think that as evangelical Christians, we are not tied to any one perspective. The same scriptures that call upon us to raise up the cause of the unborn and to protect the unborn child also call upon us to work for the homeless, for the victim of racism, for the disadvantaged, for the unemployed. Somehow, there's got to be a consistency where we're not baptizing our culture and adopting a perspective that we want to adopt. We're actually caring for people in their need, whoever they may be.
Yeah, that might be another question, when you think of evangelicals and here, so you're saying Walnut Hill, it's a big tent, it's a big tapestry. You need not have a blue blazer and one particular political persuasion one way or the other.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter the background. Probably 60% of the people here, and there would be anything up to 1900 folks here, but up to 60% would be Catholic in the background. It doesn't matter the background you come from. Doesn't matter the kind of church you used to. Doesn't matter which way you vote. We won't get onto that. Because really it's just how we come together and find Jesus and let him impact our lives, who we are and what we do.
I like that, not to get into politics, but I did like I think you wrote a foreword for a book, and the title of the book was Right Wing, Wrong Bird. I thought that was an interesting title. That was from Dr. Joel Hunter. So it isn't right wing, it isn't left wing. It's pretty much apolitical as far as that goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my closest friend in Britain, Lyndon Bowring, was the equivalent in Britain of James Dobson here.
Okay.
And
James Dobson, just for our viewers, would be considered kind of a nation. He has a nationwide radio program called Focus on the Family, and he will triumph some of the sanctity of marriage, pro-life issues, some of those things.
Jim Dobson is a tremendous voice for family values. And Lyndon, my friend, was the equivalent.
Okay.
And he would sit behind me on a public platform and I would say, no self-respecting evangelical Christian can ever be anti-abortion. And pause. And because Lyndon was my friend, he was very comfortable. If not, I might have got an interruption. Because the line I was going to use was, no self-respecting evangelical can ever be anti-abortion if they're not going to get involved in the needs of the single mum and her children, or with an adoption agency, or by extending their family. And I'm not suggesting we should be going and burning down anything, but I am suggesting that we show our commitment not by a militant protest, but by a passionate engagement with the issue. And that for me is what's changed from storming American embassies, is you find the love of Jesus and you want to be part of the answer, not part of the problem. So let's stand for the unborn, not just in our words, but in our deeds. And exactly the same when we're dealing